Lyra didn't know that the man bleeding in the castle's healing wing was the most powerful alpha in the known world. She didn't know that he'd dismissed 3 royal physicians just to ensure she would be the one to tend his wounds. And she certainly didn't know that the moment her fingers touched his skin, he would recognize her as the mate he'd been searching for his entire life. All she knew was that someone needed healing, and that was what she did. The cut on his forearm looked fresh, jagged from what appeared to be a training accident. Nothing life-threatening, but deep enough to require careful stitching. Lyra gathered her supplies with practiced efficiency, her movements quiet in the stone chamber lit by afternoon sunlight streaming through tall windows. "This might sting," she murmured, not looking up as she cleaned the wound. Professional distance. Always professional distance. It was the only way to survive in a castle where everyone had more power than a servant girl with healing hands. The moment her fingertips made contact with his skin, something impossible happened. Heat shot up her arm, spreading through her chest like liquid fire. Not the familiar warmth that came with her healing gift, but something else entirely. Something that felt like recognition, like a missing piece sliding into place. The sensation settled behind her sternum like a second heartbeat, steady and insistent. She jerked her hand back, nearly dropping her needle. "Are you all right?" His voice was deep, concerned, gentle in a way that made her chest tighten with warning. Lyra forced herself to breathe normally, to ignore whatever that had been. Probably just fatigue. She'd been working since dawn, tending to kitchen burns and stable injuries. Fine, just tired. She resumed her work, keeping her touch clinical, impersonal. But the strange pulling sensation in her chest remained, as if an invisible thread connected her to this stranger. She focused on the familiar rhythm of stitching, the methodical process of healing that usually brought her peace. "You're very skilled at this." He was watching her face instead of her hands. She could feel it. "How long have you been working in the castle?" 2 years. Short answers. Don't engage. Don't give him anything to use against you later. "And before that?" Her fingers stilled for just a moment, here and there. She could sense his frown even without looking up. Most people took the hint when she didn't elaborate. This man seemed different, patient, as if he had all the time in the world to wait for her to open up. That patience felt dangerous. There. She tied off the final stitch and reached for her salve. "Keep this clean and dry. Change the bandage daily. It should heal without scarring." "Thank you." He flexed his arm experimentally, and she noticed the corded strength there, the calluses that spoke of serious sword work. Not just decorative nobility, then. "What's your name?" "Lyra." The answer slipped out before she could stop it. "Lyra." The way he said it made something flutter behind her ribs, like he was tasting the syllables, finding them perfect. I don't need to know." She stepped back quickly, putting the wooden table between them. "Patient confidentiality works both ways. I heal, you leave. That's how this works." Something flickered across his features. Surprise, perhaps, or amusement. "Most people are eager to know who I am. Most people don't have work to do." She began cleaning her instruments with sharp, efficient movements. "The door is behind you." Instead of leaving, he moved closer, not threatening but deliberate. "Have dinner with me." The request was so unexpected that Lyra actually looked up. Big mistake. His eyes were amber, the colour of honey in sunlight, and they held an intensity that made her breath catch. Beautiful eyes. Dangerous eyes. "No." The word came out rougher than she'd intended. Why not? Because she'd learned the hard way what happened when powerful men showed interest in common girls. Because dinner never meant just dinner. Because she could feel that strange golden warmth still humming under her skin where she'd touched him, and that terrified her more than his obvious rank. "I don't get involved with patients." What if I said this was about your healing abilities, a professional consultation over a meal? I'd say you're lying. That definitely was amusement in his expression now. You're direct. I'm busy. She moved toward the door, clearly dismissing him. And you're healed. He didn't follow immediately, and she could feel his gaze on her back as she walked away. When she reached the doorway, his voice stopped her. What if I wasn't asking as someone who outranks you? Lyra's hand tightened on the doorframe. There it was, the acknowledgement of the power imbalance between them, whatever his rank might be. The reminder that she had no real choice in any of this, not if he decided to press the matter. She turned back slowly, meeting those amber eyes with all the steel she could muster. Everyone outranks me. That's exactly why the answer is no. Something shifted in his expression then. The confident ease replaced by something that looked almost like regret. That's not what I meant. It's what you said. She straightened her shoulders, armour of indifference sliding into place. Enjoy your evening, my lord. Try not to get yourself injured again so soon. This time when she walked away, he let her go. But the golden thread in her chest pulled tight with every step, and Lyra knew with cold certainty that this wouldn't be the end of it. Men like him didn't take no for an answer. They just found different ways to ask the question. She'd learned that lesson once before, in the cruelest way possible. Never again. As she made her way back to the servants' quarters, Lyra pressed one hand to her chest where that impossible warmth still flickered. Whatever that connection had been, whatever her body thought it recognised in his touch, it didn't matter. She would never again be the first to say the words that could destroy her. She would never again be vulnerable enough to love someone who saw her as temporary, even if every instinct she possessed was screaming that this man was different, especially then. The days that followed were a strange exercise in persistence. He appeared in the library on the second day, just as Lyra was gathering herbs for her morning salves, not demanding her attention, not even speaking at first. Just there, reading what looked like military reports while she worked at the far table. When she moved to leave, he looked up. "Good morning, Lyra." The way he said her name still made something flutter in her chest. She nodded curtly and walked out without responding. On the third day, she found him in the castle gardens where she always collected fresh medicinal plants. He was examining the sage bushes with what appeared to be genuine interest, though she suspected his presence there had nothing to do with herbs. "Did you know this variety grows stronger when planted near rosemary?" he said conversationally as she approached with her basket. "Yes." She knelt beside a patch of chamomile, keeping several feet between them. The rosemary's natural oils strengthen the sage's medicinal properties. Fascinating. He moved closer, crouching down to help her harvest the small white flowers. His hands were careful with the delicate stems, she noticed, respectful of the plants. "Where did you learn about healing?" "Books. Experience." She accepted the chamomile he offered, their fingers brushing briefly. That same golden heat sparked between them, and she saw his eyes darken in recognition of it. He felt it too then, whatever this impossible connection was. She pulled her hand back quickly and focused on her work. "You're very dedicated," he observed. "I've heard the other healers speak of you with respect. They say you have a gift." "I do my job." "Is that all it is to you, a job?" The question made her pause. She'd been healing people since she was old enough to understand that her touch could take away pain. It had never felt like work, more like purpose. But admitting that felt too much like vulnerability. "It pays for food and shelter, that's enough." Something in his expression softened. "Is it?" She stood abruptly, basket clutched tight in her hands. "I should get these prepared before they wilt." This time he didn't try to stop her from leaving, but she could feel his gaze following her all the way back to the castle. By the 5th day, Lyra was becoming frustrated with his quiet, patient presence. He never demanded anything, never used whatever authority he clearly possessed to force her attention. He simply appeared wherever she was working, helpful without being intrusive, kind without expecting anything in return. It was unsettling. She confronted him outside the healing wing after he'd spent the morning assisting her with inventory. Actually helping, not just pretending to be useful while bothering her with conversation. "Why are you following me?" she demanded. "Am I following you?" He set down the box of supplies he'd been carrying. "I thought I was helping." "Don't play word games with me. We both know what this is." "Do we?" His amber eyes held hers steadily. "What do you think this is, Lyra?" "A game. A distraction. Something to amuse yourself with until you get bored." The words came out sharper than she'd intended, edged with old pain she thought she'd buried. His expression grew serious. "You think I'm playing with you?" "I know you are." She crossed her arms, defensive armor sliding into place. "Men like you don't pursue women like me for any reason that ends well." "Men like me." He repeated the phrase quietly, as if testing its weight. "And what kind of man am I, Lyra?" "Powerful, entitled, used to getting what you want." She lifted her chin. "The kind who makes promises you don't intend to keep." Something flickered across his features that looked almost like pain. "Someone hurt you badly." The observation was gentle, understanding. It made her chest tighten with warning. "Everyone gets hurt. That's how the world works." "It doesn't have to be." Pretty words. She turned away from him, from the sincerity in his voice that she couldn't afford to trust. "I have work to do." Lyra. The way he said her name stopped her. When she looked back, he was watching her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "I enjoy your company. Nothing more complicated than that." "There's always something more complicated than that." "Not with me. Especially with you." She gestured vaguely at his expensive clothing, the way servants bowed when they passed him in the halls. "Look at yourself. Look at me. This doesn't make sense." What if it doesn't need to make sense? The question hung in the air between them, dangerous and tempting. For a moment Lyra almost believed him, almost let herself imagine that this golden warmth between them could be real, could be safe. Then reality crashed back. "Everything needs to make sense," she said quietly. "That's how you avoid getting destroyed." She walked away before he could respond, but she heard him sigh behind her. A sound that somehow managed to convey frustration and understanding and patience all at once. That evening, when Lyra made her way to the servants' hall for dinner, she found her usual spot at the long wooden table, occupied by something that made her stop short. A bowl of hearty stew still steaming, fresh bread with honey butter, a piece of fruit that definitely didn't come from the servants' rations, and beside it all a small cluster of wildflowers that looked suspiciously like the ones that grew near the healing wing. "Someone's got an admirer," teased Mara, the kitchen maid who sat across from her. "That's better food than most of the nobility gets." Lyra's chest tightened with something that felt dangerously close to warmth. She looked around the hall, searching for Amber Eyes, but he wasn't there, had never been there as far as she knew. "Probably a mistake," she muttered, but she sat down anyway. The stew was perfectly seasoned, the bread fresh and warm, food prepared with care, not just sustenance but nourishment, the kind of meal that spoke of someone paying attention to what she might actually enjoy. The wildflowers were the final touch that made her throat tight with emotion she couldn't afford. When she found him the next morning in the armoury, because of course he was wherever she needed to tend injuries from training accidents, she meant to confront him about the meal. Instead, what came out was, the flowers were unnecessary. He looked up from the sword he'd been examining, and his smile was soft, pleased. "You liked them?" It wasn't a question. "I didn't say that." "You kept them. I saw them in your window when I walked past the servants' quarters." Heat flooded her cheeks at being caught. "That doesn't mean anything." "Doesn't it?" He set down the sword and moved closer, not crowding her, but eliminating some of the careful distance she maintained. "When's the last time someone brought you flowers, Lyra?" The question hit harder than it should have. The truth was, no one ever had. Not for her specifically, not because they'd noticed she loved the way wildflowers looked in morning light. "That's not the point," she managed. "What is the point?" "The point is you can't just—" She gestured helplessly, struggling for words. "You can't just be kind to me like this." "Why not?" "Because it's confusing, because I don't understand what you want from me, because every time you do something thoughtful, it makes that thing in my chest pull tighter, and I can't afford to feel that." The admission slipped out before she could stop it, raw and honest in a way that made her immediately want to run. His expression grew very still. "What thing in your chest?" She should lie, should deflect, make some excuse and leave. Instead, she found herself touching the spot over her heart where that golden warmth lived. "You know what thing." "Tell me anyway." "Like a thread, golden and warm and connected to you somehow?" The words felt dangerous leaving her lips. "I felt it the moment I touched you, and it hasn't gone away." Something blazed in his amber eyes, triumph and relief and something deeper. "I felt it too." "I know." She wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly feeling exposed. "That's what makes this so impossible." "Why impossible?" "Because I've been down this road before, because men who feel, whatever this is, they still leave when something better comes along. And you will have something better come along, someone appropriate, someone who fits." He was quiet for a long moment, studying her face with an intensity that made her want to hide. When he finally spoke, his voice was gentle but certain. "You're wrong about me, Lyra." "Am I?" "Yes." He stepped closer, close enough that she could see gold flecks in his eyes. "And someday, when you're ready to trust me, I'll prove it to you." "I don't need you to prove anything." "I know." His smile was soft, patient. "That's exactly why I'm going to do it anyway." As he walked away, leaving her standing alone in the armoury with her heart pounding against her ribs, Lyra realised with growing alarm that her walls were already beginning to crack, and the most dangerous part was how much she wanted to let them. The attack came at midnight, swift and brutal. Lyra woke to screaming and the acrid smell of smoke. She threw on her robe and ran toward the sound, her bare feet slapping against cold stone as chaos erupted around her. Guards shouted orders, servants fled in terror, and somewhere in the darkness, steel clashed against steel. Assassins. Had to be. By the time she reached the healing wing, it was already overflowing with wounded. Guards with deep gashes, servants caught in the crossfire, even a few of the attackers who'd been subdued rather than killed. Blood pooled on the stone floor, and the air reeked of fear and pain. Lyra moved into the familiar rhythm of triage, her healing hands working faster than they ever had before. The worst injuries first, the young guard whose sword arm hung useless, the kitchen maid with a head wound that wouldn't stop bleeding. She poured her gift into them, feeling the familiar drain as her energy flowed out to mend torn flesh and shattered bone. Hour after hour she worked. The other healers came and went, but Lyra remained, moving from bed to bed like a woman possessed. She couldn't stop, wouldn't stop, not while people were suffering. "Lyra!" Someone was shaking her shoulder. "Lyra, you need to rest." She blinked up at the unfamiliar face of another healer, trying to focus through the exhaustion that felt like lead in her veins. "No, there are still—" "Everyone's been treated. The wounded are stable." The woman's voice was gentle but firm. "You've been working for 18 hours straight. If you don't rest, you'll collapse." 18 hours. Lyra looked around the healing wing in confusion. When had the sun risen? When had it set again? The last thing she clearly remembered was that first rush of wounded in the darkness. She tried to stand and immediately swayed, black spots dancing at the edges of her vision. Strong arms caught her before she could fall, and she found herself looking up into familiar amber eyes. "Easy." His voice was soft, concerned. "I've got you." "I'm fine," she protested weakly, but her legs felt like water beneath her. "No, you're not." He scooped her up as if she weighed nothing, cradling her against his chest. When's the last time you ate or slept? Lyra tried to remember and came up blank. There were people who needed... And you helped them, all of them. He was walking now, carrying her through corridors she didn't recognize. But you can't heal anyone if you work yourself to death. She should protest being carried like this, should demand he put her down. But the exhaustion was too deep, and his arms felt impossibly safe. The golden thread in her chest hummed with contentment at being close to him, and she was too tired to fight it. "Where are you taking me?" "Somewhere you can rest without being disturbed." The room he brought her to was clearly his private chambers, spacious and elegantly appointed, with a fire crackling in the hearth and soft furs draped over carved furniture. He set her down gently on the massive bed, ignoring her weak protests about propriety. "Rest?" He pulled a thick blanket over her. "I'll bring you food." "I should go back to the servants' quarters." "The servants' quarters are chaos right now. Half the castle is being repaired from the attack." His hand brushed her hair back from her face, the touch gentle and careful. "Sleep, Lyra. Everything else can wait." She wanted to argue, but her eyelids felt impossibly heavy. The bed was soft and warm, and for the first time in hours she wasn't surrounded by pain and fear. Despite every instinct screaming that she shouldn't be here, in his room, in his bed, she let herself sink into the comfort he offered. When she woke, pale afternoon light was streaming through tall windows. Someone had left a tray of food beside the bed, fresh bread, cheese, fruit, and what looked like her favourite honeycakes from the kitchen. Her stomach cramped with sudden hunger, and she realised she truly hadn't eaten since before the attack. "You're awake!" He emerged from the seating area near the fire, where he'd apparently been reading while she slept. "How do you feel?" "Better." She sat up slowly, testing her strength. "Much better. Thank you for..." She gestured vaguely at the room, the food, the care he'd shown. "You didn't have to do all this." "Yes, I did." He settled into a chair beside the bed, close enough to reach her if needed, but not crowding. "What you did last night was extraordinary. You saved lives, Lyra, a lot of them." "I did my job." "You did more than your job. You gave everything you had to help people who needed you." His amber eyes were serious, intent. "That's not duty. That's something else entirely." The sincerity in his voice made her chest tight. She reached for a piece of bread, needing something to do with her hands. Anyone would have done the same. No, they wouldn't. He leaned forward slightly. "I watched you work. I've never seen healing like that. Never seen someone pour themselves so completely into saving others. It was..." He paused, searching for words. "Humbling." "You were there?" She hadn't seen him in the healing wing, but then again she'd been so focused on her patients. "I was everywhere last night, coordinating the defence, hunting down the remaining assassins, checking on the wounded." His expression darkened. "But I kept coming back to watch you work. Even in the middle of everything else, I couldn't stay away." Something in his tone made her look at him more carefully. There was exhaustion in his face too, lines of stress and sleeplessness. "Are you hurt?" "Nothing that matters." "That's not an answer." She set down the bread and really looked at him. "Show me." "Lyra, show me." The healer in her wouldn't be denied. "You took care of me. Let me return the favour." After a moment's hesitation he pulled off his shirt. There were several cuts across his chest and arms, already partially healed, but still angry and red. Nothing serious, but they had to be painful. "Come here." She patted the bed beside her. "Let me see those properly." He moved to sit on the edge of the bed, and she reached out to touch the worst of the cuts. The moment her fingers made contact with his skin, that familiar golden warmth flowed between them, stronger than it had ever been. She felt his sharp intake of breath, saw his eyes darken. "Does that hurt?" she whispered. "No." His voice was rough. The opposite of hurt. She understood what he meant. Her healing gift had always brought her satisfaction, but this was different. Touching him, channeling her power into his body, felt like coming home. like two pieces of a puzzle finally fitting together. As she worked, the exhaustion that had been plaguing her seemed to fade. Usually healing drained her, left her weak and tired, but healing him somehow restored her, filled the empty spaces in her chest with that golden light. "How is this possible?" she murmured, watching the cuts close under her touch. "I don't know." His hand covered hers, stilling her movements. "But I'm grateful for it." They sat in silence for a moment, her hand pressed against his chest, his covering hers. The connection between them thrummed with energy, with possibility, with something that felt bigger than both of them. "I was married once," she said suddenly, the words spilling out before she could stop them. "Not legally, but in every way that mattered to me." She felt him go still beneath her hand. His name was Marcus, a merchant's son with charm and pretty words. The old pain rose in her throat, but for the first time it felt manageable. "He told me he loved me, told me we'd be together always, that nothing could separate us." "What happened?" "His father arranged a marriage, a profitable match with a merchant's daughter who could expand the family business." The bitterness in her voice surprised her with its sharpness. "Marcus came to tell me the night before his engagement was announced. Said he was sorry, but duty came first." "He left you." "He left me." She pulled her hand back, wrapping her arms around herself. "But not before he made it clear that what we'd had was never real. Not to him. I was convenient, available, a way to pass the time until something better came along." "Lyra, the worst part wasn't that he left. The worst part was that I'd told him I loved him first. I'd made myself vulnerable, opened my heart completely, and he used it against me." She looked up at him, meeting his amber eyes directly. "He said he'd been waiting for me to say it, that it made it easier to leave, knowing I was more invested than he was." Something dangerous flashed across his features. "He said that to you?" "He said a lot of things, none of them kind." She shrugged, trying for casual indifference and failing. "So you see why this—" She gestured between them. "Why I can't let myself trust this connection we feel. I'm not him. I know that. Logically, I know that." She pulled the blanket more tightly around herself. "But knowing and feeling are different things." He was quiet for a long time, studying her face with that intense focus that made her feel exposed. When he finally spoke, his voice was gentle but certain. "I would never make you a secret, Lyra. I would never use your feelings against you, and I would never, ever make you choose between loving me and protecting yourself." "How can you promise that? You don't even know me." "I know enough." He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and cupped her face in his hands. "I know you stayed awake for 18 hours straight to heal people you'd never met. I know you tried to refuse food and rest because you thought others needed them more. I know you have a gift that could make you wealthy and powerful, but you use it to serve." His thumbs brushed across her cheekbones, and she realized she was crying. "I know you're brave and kind and selfless, and I know that whoever hurt you was a fool who didn't deserve what you offered him." His voice dropped to a whisper. "And I know that whatever this is between us, whatever this golden thread means, I'm not going anywhere." "You say that now. I'll say it tomorrow too, and the day after that, and every day until you believe me." The sincerity in his voice, the patience in his touch, the way he looked at her like she was precious. It was everything she dreamed of and everything she feared. "I won't say it first," she whispered, the confession torn from her chest. "I can't make myself that vulnerable again." "You won't have to." His forehead touched hers, and she could feel his breath against her lips. "When you're ready to hear it, when you trust that I mean it, I'll say it first. What if I'm never ready? Then I'll wait." His smile was soft, sad, hopeful. "However long it takes, Lyra, I'll wait." For the first time since Marcus had shattered her heart, Lyra let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, someone could love her enough to be patient with her fears. the golden thread in her chest pulled tight with longing and hope and terror all tangled together. Maybe letting someone catch her when she fell didn't have to mean getting hurt. Maybe it could mean being held. The weeks that followed were a strange dance of growing trust and lingering fear. After that night in his chambers, something had shifted between them. Not broken exactly, but cracked open enough to let light through. He no longer hid his presence when he sought her out, and she no longer pretended his attention wasn't affecting her. They fell into a routine. He would appear in the healing wing each afternoon, ostensibly to check on recovering guards, but really to sit with her while she worked. Their conversations grew longer, deeper. He told her about the burden of ruling, the weight of decisions that affected thousands of lives. She shared stories of the people she'd healed, the small victories that made her work worthwhile. It felt dangerous, this growing intimacy, but it also felt inevitable. Until the whispers started. Lyra first heard them in the servants' hall, hushed conversations that stopped when she approached. Something about political marriages, trade agreements, alliances that needed strengthening. The kind of talk that swirled around every royal court, but this time it felt different. This time it felt personal. "The northern kingdoms are pressing for an answer," she overheard one of the kitchen maids saying to another. "Lady Evangeline's father won't wait much longer." "She's beautiful," the other replied, "and wealthy, perfect queen material." "King's got to marry someone eventually, can't rule alone forever." The words hit Lyra like physical blows. King. He was the king, and she'd been too willfully blind to see it. The deference of the servants, the authority in his voice, the way guards snapped to attention when he walked by, it all made terrible sense now. And kings didn't marry servant girls with healing hands. They married ladies with titles and dowries and political connections. She managed to make it back to her small chamber before the panic set in. Her chest felt tight, that golden thread constricting like a noose. She'd been so careful, so determined not to make the same mistake twice, and yet here she was again, falling for someone who could never truly be hers. The worst part was how he'd hidden it from her. Let her believe they were equals of a sort, let her grow comfortable with his attention while knowing all along that whatever was between them could only be temporary. By the time he found her the next evening, Lyra had spent 24 hours building her walls back up. She was in the herb garden, mechanically harvesting chamomile in the fading light, when his shadow fell across her work. "You've been avoiding me." His voice was carefully neutral, but she could hear the concern underneath. "I've been busy." She didn't look up from the flowers. Professional distance. She could do this. "Lyra." He crouched down beside her, close enough that she could feel his warmth. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong." She stood abruptly, putting space between them. "I just think it's best if we keep things professional from now on." "Professional?" He rose slowly, studying her face in the twilight. "What happened?" "Nothing happened. I just remembered my place." Something flickered across his features. Understanding, maybe, or resignation. "What did you hear?" The question confirmed her worst fears. He knew, had always known this would end. "Does it matter?" She clutched her basket tighter, using it as a shield between them. "You must have realized I'd figure it out eventually." "Figure out what exactly?" "That you're the king." The words tasted bitter. "That this, whatever this has been, it can't go anywhere real." "Lyra." "Lady Evangeline sounds lovely." She forced brightness into her voice, the same tone she used when delivering bad news to families. "Wealthy, beautiful, perfect queen material, everything you need." His expression went very still. "You think I'm going to marry her?" "Aren't you?" She lifted her chin, meeting his amber eyes directly. "Isn't that what kings do? Marry for alliances and heirs and political advantage?" "Some kings do, yes." "And you're different?" The question came out sharper than she'd intended, edged with all her old fears. "You're going to choose love over duty, the healing servant over the noble lady?" Yes. The simple certainty in his voice made her chest tight. You say that now. I'll say it tomorrow too, and the day after that. Until your council pressures you into doing what's expected, until you realise that marrying me would be political suicide. She shook her head, stepping back when he moved closer. I won't be your secret, and I won't be your distraction while you do your royal duty with someone else. I would never ask you to be either of those things. You wouldn't have to ask. It's just how these things work. She wrapped her arms around herself, armour against the hurt. Powerful men take what they want from women like me, then marry women like her. I'm not him. His voice was rough with emotion. I'm not Marcus. No, you're worse. The words spilled out before she could stop them. At least he was honest about what I meant to him. At least he didn't pretend we could have forever when he knew it was impossible. It's not impossible. You're the king. The shout echoed in the garden, raw and desperate. I'm a servant with no family, no connections, no political value whatsoever. In what world does that work? In a world where I get to choose who I love. The word hung between them like a blade. Love. He'd said it so casually, so certainly, and it terrified her more than anything else he could have said. Don't! She held up a hand, backing away from him. Don't say things you don't mean. I mean it. He followed her step for step, relentless in his honesty. I love you, Lyra. I've been trying to be patient, trying to wait until you were ready to hear it, but I can't watch you tear yourself apart over something that isn't true. It is true. Tears she couldn't control spilled down her cheeks. Look at us. Look at what this is. What is it? He stopped moving, letting her put distance between them. Tell me what you see when you look at us. A mistake, a fantasy that was always going to end badly. I see two people who found each other against all odds. His voice was gentle now, patient despite her accusations. I see someone who makes me want to be better than I am. Someone who looks at me and sees a man, not a crown. The crown is who you are. Part of who I am, not all of it. He took a careful step closer. The man who brings you flowers, who sits with you while you work, who would wait forever for you to trust him. That's who I am too. It doesn't matter. She wiped her tears with the back of her hand, trying to find some dignity in the wreckage. It doesn't matter what we feel or what we want. You have responsibilities. My biggest responsibility is to my people, and choosing a queen who will care about them, who will use her gifts to serve them, who will rule with compassion and wisdom. That's not shirking my duty, that's fulfilling it. The words made something crack open in her chest, hope bleeding through despite every effort to contain it. They'll never accept me. They will. When they see you as I see you, they'll understand. He held out his hand, palm up, an invitation. I've been refusing political marriages for 3 years, Lyra, waiting for something real, waiting for you. You didn't even know I existed 3 years ago? I knew you were out there somewhere. I felt the pull, the emptiness where my mate should be. His amber eyes were steady, certain. The golden thread you feel, I've felt it my whole life, a missing piece calling me to find you. That's not possible, isn't it? He stepped closer, and she didn't retreat this time. You felt it the moment we met. You feel it now, even when you're trying to convince yourself this is wrong. She did feel it. The warmth in her chest, the sense of rightness when he was near, the way her healing gift sang when she touched him. Everything in her body recognized him as hers, even as her mind insisted it was impossible. I'm scared. The admission was whispered, barely audible. I know. His hand finally touched hers, gentle and sure. But you don't have to be scared alone anymore. What if this destroys you? What if choosing me costs you your kingdom? Then I'll build us a new life somewhere else. The answer came without hesitation. I'd rather have you and nothing else than have everything without you. You don't mean that. I mean every word. He brought her hand to his chest, pressing it over his heart. "Feel that. Feel how steady it is when you touch me. That's not going anywhere, Lyra. Not for politics, not for duty, not for anything." The golden thread between them thrummed with truth, with certainty, with a connection deeper than fear or logic or the cruel lessons of the past. For the first time since she'd overheard those whispers, Lyra let herself believe that maybe he really was different. Maybe love could be stronger than duty. Maybe she could trust him to catch her when she fell. "I won't say it first," she whispered, the old fear still clinging to her heart. "You don't have to." His forehead touched hers, and she felt his smile against her skin. "I already did." And for the first time, those 3 dangerous words didn't sound like a trap. They sounded like a promise. 2 days later, Lyra was walking past the council chambers when she heard his voice, clear and uncompromising, carrying through the partially open door. "I will not marry Lady Evangeline. I will not marry anyone chosen for political convenience. This discussion is closed." She froze in the corridor, her heart hammering against her ribs. She shouldn't be listening, should walk away, pretend she hadn't heard anything. But her feet remained rooted to the stone floor. "Your Majesty," an older voice replied, strained with frustration, "the Northern Alliance requires—" "The Northern Alliance will have to find another way." His tone brooked no argument. "I love someone else." "Love?" Another voice, sharper, more disdainful. "Your Majesty, with respect, love is a luxury kings cannot afford. You have duties, responsibilities to your people." "My responsibility is to rule well, to protect and serve my kingdom. Marrying a woman I don't love, who doesn't love me, will not make me a better king." "But your Majesty—" "I said no." The finality in his voice made Lyra's chest tight with something between terror and wonder. "Find another way to secure the alliance. Arrange trade agreements, military support, whatever you need, but I will not sacrifice my happiness or hers for politics." "And what of heirs? The succession?" "Will be secured by my marriage to the woman I choose, the woman I love." Silence fell in the chamber, heavy with tension and unspoken conflict. Lyra pressed her back against the corridor wall, overwhelmed by what she'd just heard. He'd meant it. Every word he'd said to her in the garden, every promise, every declaration. He was willing to fight his entire council for her, willing to risk political disaster rather than give her up. "Who is she?" the sharp-voiced counsellor again. "This woman you love?" "That," he said quietly, "is not your concern." Footsteps approached the door, and Lyra panicked, hurrying away before anyone could see her. But his words followed her down the corridor, echoing in her mind with devastating clarity. "I love someone else." He'd said it to them first, before saying it to her. Not the romantic declaration she'd always imagined, but something infinitely more powerful. A public stand, a line drawn in the sand, a choice made before witnesses who could hold him to it. She made it to her chamber before the tears started. Not tears of sadness, but of something far more overwhelming. Relief and terror and gratitude all tangled together until she couldn't tell where one emotion ended and another began. He'd kept his word. Had said it first, just as he'd promised. Not to her face with flowers and candlelight, but in a way that mattered more, to the people who had the power to tear them apart. But that also meant the choice was real now, immediate. She couldn't hide behind the fantasy that this was temporary, couldn't pretend that his feelings weren't serious. He was asking her to step into a life she'd never imagined, to become someone she'd never thought she could be, to trust him completely. The thought terrified her. That evening she found him in his private garden, the same place where she'd accused him of being no different from Marcus. He was sitting on a stone bench beneath the rose arbour, head tilted back to look at the stars emerging in the darkening sky. "You heard." "It wasn't a question. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop." She moved closer slowly, as if approaching a wild animal that might bolt. "I was walking past when I heard your voice." "I'm glad." He looked at her then, and his expression was soft, vulnerable. "I wanted you to know that what I told you was real, that I meant every word. They're not going to give up easily." She settled beside him on the bench, leaving space between them, but not the careful distance she'd maintained for weeks. "Your council, they'll keep pushing." "Let them push." He shrugged, apparently unconcerned. "I've been saying no to arranged marriages since I took the throne. They know I'm stubborn. This is different, though. This time they know there's someone specific." "Yes." His amber eyes found hers in the twilight. "This time they know I'm not waiting for something better to come along. I'm waiting for someone specific to decide if she trusts me enough to say yes." The words hung in the garden air between them, heavy with implication. A question that wasn't quite a question, a proposal that wasn't quite a proposal. "I heard what you said to them," she whispered, "about loving someone else." "I should have said it to you first." Regret coloured his voice. "You deserve to hear it properly, not overhear it through a door." "No." She shook her head, surprising them both. This was better. Better? Anyone can say pretty words in private, but you stood up to your entire council for me. You made it real, made it public. She turned to face him fully. "You said it to them first because you were protecting what we have, protecting me." Something blazed in his expression. Hope, maybe, or relief. "I was." "I know." She took a shaky breath, feeling as if she stood on the edge of a cliff. "That's why I'm here." "Lyra." "I won't say it first," she said quickly, the old fear still clinging to her heart like armour. "I know you think I should be able to, that I should be past what Marcus did, but I can't. I'm still too scared." "I would never ask you to be past something that hurt you that deeply." His hand found hers on the bench between them. "Healing takes time." "But I need you to know that I want to. I want to be brave enough to say it first, to be the one who takes the leap." Tears she couldn't control spilled down her cheeks. I can't. You don't have to. I want to trust you. I want to believe that this is real, that you won't leave when things get difficult, or when the council pressures you, or when you realise what marrying me would actually cost you." "I already know what it would cost me." His voice was gentle but certain. "Political complications, difficult negotiations, pressure from advisers who think they know better. And none of it matters." He brought her hand to his lips, pressing a soft kiss to her knuckles. "Do you know what it would cost me to lose you?" She shook her head, not trusting her voice. "Everything that matters, my heart, my happiness, my ability to be the kind of king I want to be, because the best parts of me come alive when I'm with you. You don't know that." "I do know that." He shifted closer, close enough that she could see the gold flecks in his eyes. "I've been half alive my whole life, Lyra, going through the motions, doing my duty, but never really feeling anything deeply. And then I met you, and suddenly everything was brighter, sharper, more real. That's the mate bond talking." "Is it?" His smile was soft, knowing. "Then why does it feel like choice? Why does loving you feel like the first real decision I've ever made?" The question hung between them, impossible to answer because it touched something she felt but couldn't explain. The golden thread between them wasn't just supernatural destiny. It was recognition, rightness, the sense that all the broken pieces of herself finally had somewhere to belong. "I'm scared," she whispered. "I know." His forehead touched hers, and she felt his breath against her lips. "But you don't have to be scared alone anymore." "What if I'm never ready? What if I can't ever be brave enough to—" "I love you." The words were soft, certain, devastating in their simplicity. "I love your strength and your fear and everything in between. I love the way you care for people, the way you put their needs before your own, the way you make me want to be better." "Stop." Her voice broke on the word. I love your stubbornness and your kindness and the way you challenge me to think beyond politics and duty to what really matters." He cupped her face in his hands, thumbs brushing away her tears. "I love that you won't settle for pretty words, that you demand honesty, even when it's harder. Please? I love you completely, desperately, with everything I am and everything I'll ever be." His voice dropped to a whisper, intimate and sure. "Your turn." The phrase hit her like a physical blow, but not the cruel kind she'd experienced before. This was invitation, not demand, permission, not pressure. He'd given her his heart fully, completely, and now he was waiting, would always be waiting, for her to decide if she could trust him with hers. "I won't say it first," she warned, even as her walls crumbled around her. "You don't have to," he said again, patient and steady. "I already did." "But I want to." The admission tore from her chest, raw and real. "I want to be brave enough. I want to trust you that much." "Then trust me." His lips brushed hers, soft as a promise. "Trust that I mean it. Trust that I'm not going anywhere. Trust that loving me won't destroy you." And suddenly, looking into his amber eyes, feeling the golden thread between them humming with certainty and warmth, she did trust him. Completely. Irrevocably. "I love you too." The words spilled out like water breaking through a dam, desperate and relieved and terrified and joyful all at once. "I love you so much it scares me, because I've never felt anything this real before." His smile was devastating, brilliant, full of wonder and triumph and tender relief. "Say it again," he whispered. "I love you." Easier this time, like a muscle learning new movement. "I love your patience and your kindness and the way you see something worth fighting for in me when I can't see it myself." He kissed her then, deep and claiming and full of all the emotion they'd both been holding back. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, she could see tears in his own eyes. "You said it first," he murmured, wonder in his voice. "No." She smiled through her tears, finally understanding. "You did. I just said it back." "Does it matter?" "No." She kissed him again, soft and sure. "It doesn't matter who says it first. It only matters that we both mean it." "I'll always mean it." His arms came around her, holding her close against his chest. "For the rest of my life, Lyra, I'll always mean it." "So will I." She buried her face against his neck, breathing in his warmth, his safety, his certainty. "I choose you. I choose us. I choose to be brave enough to stay." And in the garden where her walls had finally crumbled completely, where love had proved stronger than fear, Lyra finally understood what Marcus had never been able to give her. Not just the words, but the safety to say them. Not just promises, but the certainty that they would be kept. Not just love, but trust. The golden thread between them blazed with warmth and rightness, and the deep, unshakable knowledge that some things, the best things, were worth the risk of saying first. 3 weeks later, Lyra stood in front of a mirror in chambers she still couldn't quite believe were hers, watching as the royal seamstress made final adjustments to a gown that cost more than she'd earned in her entire life as a healer. "Perfect," the woman murmured, stepping back to admire her work. "You look every inch a queen, my lady." Queen. The word still felt foreign on her tongue, impossible and wonderful in equal measure. Tomorrow she would stand before the assembled court and accept the crown that would make their engagement official. Tonight was the formal announcement, the dinner where she would be introduced to visiting dignitaries as the king's chosen bride. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. "Come in." He entered, already dressed in formal court attire that emphasized his natural authority and made her heart skip with appreciation. But his eyes, when they found her reflection in the mirror, held the same wonder and tenderness they'd held in the garden 3 weeks ago. "You're beautiful." He moved to stand behind her, hands settling gently on her shoulders. "But then, you always are." "I'm terrified." The admission slipped out before she could stop it. "What if they hate me? What if they think you've lost your mind? They'll love you. His certainty was absolute. How could they not? I'm nobody, a servant with no family, no connections, no experience with politics or diplomacy, or any of the things queens are supposed to know. You're someone who spent 18 hours straight healing people without thought for yourself, someone who sees past titles and crowns to the person underneath, someone who makes me want to be the kind of king who deserves your respect. His hands tightened gently on her shoulders. That's exactly the kind of queen my people need. I don't know how to be royal. You don't have to be royal. He turned her to face him, amber eyes serious and sure. You just have to be you, the woman who challenges me to think beyond politics to what's right, the woman who cares more about healing than hierarchy. And if that's not enough, it's everything. He cupped her face in his hands, thumbs brushing across her cheekbones. Do you remember what you said to me that first day, when I asked you to dinner? I said no. You said everyone outranks you, that's exactly why the answer was no. His smile was soft, proud. You were protecting yourself, but you were also showing me exactly who you are, someone who won't be intimidated or bought or impressed by titles, someone who demands to be valued for who you are, not what you can do for someone else's ambitions. I remember. That's when I knew. His forehead touched hers, intimate and sure. That's when I knew you were extraordinary. Before she could respond, another knock came at the door. Your Majesty, my lady, it's time. Lyra's stomach clenched with nerves, but his hand found hers, steady and warm. Together, he murmured. Together, she agreed. The great hall was blazing with candlelight and filled with the most powerful people in the kingdom. Lyra had worked in this castle for 2 years, had seen these halls during quiet morning hours and busy afternoon rushes, but she'd never seen them like this, alive with music and conversation and the rustle of expensive fabrics. Every eye turned toward them as they entered, and Lyra felt the weight of their scrutiny like a physical thing. Curiosity, surprise, and yes, some disapproval, but also interest, speculation, and from a few faces she recognized from the healing wing, genuine warmth. He led her to the high table, where places had been set for them at the centre. As they took their seats, the hall gradually quieted, anticipation thick in the air. When he rose to speak, silence fell completely. My lords and ladies, honoured guests, his voice carried easily through the great space, I present to you Lady Lyra, my chosen bride and your future queen. The words sent a thrill through her chest, pride and terror mingled together. She stood beside him, grateful for his steadying presence as murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some of you may be surprised by my choice, he continued, and there was steel beneath the diplomacy in his voice. Lady Lyra comes to us not through political alliance or family connection, but through merit and worth. She has served this kingdom faithfully as a healer, saving lives and easing suffering without thought for recognition or reward. A few voices murmured appreciation from the crowd. Guards she'd treated, servants whose children she'd healed, nobles who'd benefited from her gift. She is kind without being weak, strong without being cruel, and wise without being proud. She has my love, my respect, and my absolute confidence in her ability to serve you as your queen. His hand found hers on the table, fingers intertwining. I hope you will welcome her as I have been welcomed by her grace. The applause that followed was polite rather than enthusiastic, but it was a beginning. As they sat and the feast commenced, Lyra found herself relaxing slightly into the rhythm of formal dinner conversation. The lord to her right inquired about her healing methods with genuine interest. The ambassador's wife across the table praised her work during the recent attack. Even Lord Garrett, who'd been one of the strongest voices for political marriage, engaged her in thoughtful discussion about the healing wing's needs and resources. You've surprised them, the king murmured, during a quiet moment between courses, in the best possible way. "I'm surviving," she replied softly. "Barely." "You're thriving." His smile was warm, proud. "Look around you, Lyra. Really look." She did, and realized with surprise that the conversation at their table had grown animated, natural. People were laughing, asking questions, including her, as if she belonged there. The initial stiffness had given way to genuine engagement. "They're getting to know you," he said, "just as I did. And just like me, they're discovering what I've known all along." "What's that?" "That you're extraordinary." Later, after the formal dinner had ended and they'd retreated to his private balcony overlooking the kingdom spread below them, Lyra finally felt like she could breathe normally again. "That went better than I expected," she admitted, accepting the glass of wine he offered. "I told you they'd love you." "They don't love me yet, but they don't hate me either." She leaned against the stone railing, looking out at the lights twinkling in the darkness. "I think I can work with that." "We can work with that," he corrected, moving to stand beside her. "This isn't something you have to do alone." "I know." She turned to look at him, this man who changed her entire world in the space of a few weeks. "I love you." The words came easily now, naturally. The fear that had once gripped her heart at the thought of saying them first had gradually faded into distant memory. "I love you too." His response was immediate, automatic, but no less sincere for its familiarity. "Every day more than the day before." "Is that your new morning routine? Saying it first every day to ease my anxieties?" "Do you need me to?" She considered the question seriously. The old fears were still there, probably always would be to some extent, but they felt manageable now, distant echoes rather than present dangers. "No," she said finally. "I think I can take turns now." His smile was brilliant, delighted by her growth and confidence. "Good, because I love hearing it from you." "I love you," she said again, just for the pleasure of watching his expression light up. "My stubborn, patient, impossible king." "Your king," he agreed, pulling her into his arms. "Your husband, soon. Your partner in all things." "All things." "The royal physician's position is open," he said casually. "Apparently the current holder is about to be very busy with queenly duties, but she might consider consulting on difficult cases." "You're giving me a way to keep healing." "I'm giving you a way to keep being who you are. The crown should enhance what you already are, not replace it." The thoughtfulness of it, the way he'd considered her needs and desires, made her throat tight with emotion. This was what she'd never had before, what Marcus had never offered, a partnership that honoured all of who she was. "What about children?" she asked softly. "Heirs? The succession you were so confident about with your council?" "When we're ready, when you want them, if you want them." His hands framed her face gently. "I want everything with you, Lyra, but only what you want too." "I want it all." The certainty in her own voice surprised her. "I want to be your queen, your partner, the mother of your children. I want to heal people and rule beside you and build something lasting together." "Then that's what we'll have." "Promise?" "I promise." He kissed her then, soft and sure, and full of all the future they were building together. "For the rest of our lives, whatever you want, whatever you dream of, we'll make it real." As they stood together on the balcony overlooking their kingdom, surrounded by the warm night air and the certainty of their love, Lyra finally understood what she'd been searching for, without knowing it. Not just love, but partnership. Not just promises, but the safety to build dreams together. Not just someone who would say, "I love you" first, but someone who would keep saying it, keep meaning it, keep proving it every day for the rest of their lives. The golden thread between them hummed with contentment, with rightness, with the deep knowledge that some things were worth waiting for. Some people were worth the risk of loving completely, and sometimes, when you were brave enough to stay instead of run, you got to keep what you loved forever. Where are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. I love hearing your thoughts about these stories, and if you'd like to support me, please subscribe. It's free, and it helps more people hear these stories that remind us all that love really can conquer fear.